full screen.
Are we?
Kinda
Let's see.
looks like that.
Yeah. Okay. Hello. Hi, my fellow introverts. We're today together with Dima. If you cannot hear us or something is wrong, please let us know in the chat. So we will react right away. Did it start actually? Yeah, I guess it started. Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. So hello, my fellow introverts. So again, this is Stacy. This is Dima. If you haven't heard us before, so today we're making this live stream about how to choose a testing technology. So I brought this book. Don't panic. This is something that I want to do sometimes when I'm on a project and I need to make a decision like that, that I have to, pick a technology. But kudos for those ones who know what this book is. This is actually this one, The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So high five to the ones who actually read it. So we will start in a moment, but I need to tell a few things because this is the only way of communicating with you guys. So this is the week when it's a Programmer's Day, so we have a couple of presents if you haven't seen it yet. So we have a couple of courses coming up, and if this week you will send us an email, you should, I will leave a comment under this video. If you send us an email, you can get a voucher for 10% of discount for any course except this Ultimate Test Automation course. And also, if you want to, you can have an interview with us, like a test interview, because some of you might want to change your jobs because, the times are difficult right now, so people are changing jobs. So basically, you can have an interview for a Python programmer, for a tester, for a test automation engineer, and for front-end developer. If you want to, it's for free. By the end of the week, you have to write us an email and we will schedule a call, and this is going to be just for free. And after the interview, of course, we will give you some feedback. So yeah, so sorry for short promotion here. There are not going to be any other promotions, and I guess we can slightly start. So I guess we need to introduce ourselves first, because not everyone knows me, and I guess you don't know Dima. By the way, Dima was our technical expert last time, so he was actually answering the questions in the chat, and he was dealing with all of the technical stuff last time we had the stream. So thank you, Dima.
You're welcome.
And if you could please present yourself.
Well, hi guys, my name is Dima. I'm currently occupying a role of full stack software engineer for about 3 or 4 years, I don't remember really. And before that, I had a pleasure to work as a QA expert on a different projects, both manual and automated. So I guess 8 years of experience in QA field leave a big mark on one's life and vision of the field. So maybe I'll be able to provide some insights or tribal knowledge, let's say, how it looks in the field, how business cooperate with quality assurance team and the whole engineering. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, any hobbies?
Hobbies, oh my god, there's too much of
okay,
them.
Okay.
Like anything you can name, that will be my hobby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so hi, I'm Stacy. If you haven't seen my videos, then you don't know me yet. So I'm the main guy who makes videos on this channel. So basically, I am also, my experience is very similar to Dima's. Actually, we worked in the same company for some time, but anyway, so I used to be a test automation engineer as well. So I did it for like 8 to 9 years. I hardly remember, to be honest. So it's a very long time. And now I'm a full stack developer. So my primary language is Python, and I also do frontend with JavaScript with all of the frameworks that there are, like the most popular ones. And I still do testing, like a lot of testing. That's why we picked this topic today, because this is something I feel like I'm responsible for still, even being a developer. So I guess this is going to be an interesting discussion, because we both switched our jobs. We were
Our field.
Yes, our field, definitely. So I guess we can look at different perspectives here. Okay, so I guess let's start. As was said before, the topic of this stream is choosing the right technical stack for the testing on the project. So I would like to start with something which never is going to happen, but we need to know how it's done by the book. So let's imagine we have an ideal world. So we have an infinite budget. We have like all the money there is, and we have all the time that we have, basically, and we need to somehow understand which technical stack we are going to pick for this project. The project starts, so it's not like an ongoing project. It just starts, so we're free to pick anything we want. So, Dima, any ideas? How would you approach this in ideal world, of course?
In ideal world?
Yes.
Well, I will start firstly to look at the main language, main technical stack of the project.
Okay.
Because it will influence, for sure, it will influence the tools that we will choose to automate stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, there before everything, there should be like test strategy or something, like a document, a contract between the engineering team and business.
Okay.
Where it should be well written, what does quality mean for this particular project. Because recently I noticed that people tend to omit this step, and later on into development, there usually is some kind of misunderstanding or mismatched expectations of what should be tested, what level of quality the product should have.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, this should be the first thing set, maybe not in stone, but in some kind of clay to work with later on.
Okay.
Because we are all agile and stuff. Yeah. And after you've decided what should be tested, and you looked at the main language of the project and that kind of stuff, you have to consider how many testers you already have. What experience does those testers have? Do you have automation engineers? Do you have manual QAs? Whether your manual QAs want to extend their area of expertise and start to learn automation, for example. Because there's a lot of tools that are cool tools, but for novice, they are not really the first pick. At least I would never pick those tools for non-experienced test automation engineers. Well, basically, really like shallow checklist
Mhm.
that I will follow.
Mhm.
For me, it will be enough information to decide on what we want to implement.
Okay, but you are saying we will have already a scope or like a couple of test engineers, right? Test automation or manual ones.
Well,
But if you could pick how many, how would you approach this?
you have to consider how many do you have already,
Okay.
and basically the test strategy for the project should dictate how many testers or QAs do you really need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for how many it will be, well, usually you look at the amount of developers that you have,
Mhm.
and you like choose some kind of a ratio. I don't know. It really depends on the experience of the testers, test engineers that you have. But usually it's like 4-1, I guess.
41, you mean like one?
Or developers to one
Okay.
testers, at least in my experience.
Okay.
Usually it's something like that. It tends to differ a lot based on the complexity of the project, based on the actual developers that work on the project, because sometimes some teams, the developers are eager to help in testing, so usually in that case QAs tend to offload some of the more repetitive tasks on devs. I don't know, some teams tend to help testers in regression testing, for example, because for regression usually you have a regression checklist,
Yeah.
and you have all of the expected results, and it's pretty easy to anyone to jump in and just go through these steps. The same goes with automation, because again, some developers, some teams tend to like automation and tend to
Exactly.
help.
I wanted to say that. Yeah.
Automation engineers write this automation, but there is I will say there is a catch, because again, developers are not test engineers, and usually developers are more experienced with the code itself. They tend to use much more layers of abstraction, and these may backfire later on when the testing team will not know what is happening in the like deeply into the test framework that is used. So it's kind of tricky, but well, life is tricky, so you have to adapt.
One thing I forgot to mention, if you guys have any questions, you can write them in the live chat. We will try to address them as soon as we see them and as soon as we finish a topic. So, or we will just address them at the end. So please just write if you have a situation, for example, that you have in the project and you're wondering what do we think about this situation, how we would handle it, then please go ahead. It's open, so yeah, you can.
We will try to answer all of the questions.
We'll do our best. Yeah. Okay. So maybe a tricky question, because I have my opinion on this. But what do you think about when you have a project, and let's say they didn't have any QAs and now they want to have them? This unfortunately happens, and the technology for the QAs is being picked, and everyone decides that you have to pick the same programming language for QAs as developers have been already using. for example, we have like QAs, we don't know which QAs we have, like they might be from Python world, from Java, from JavaScript even. We might not know because we're looking just for somebody, the situation is harsh. And we're just saying, okay guys, you have to use, for example, JavaScript for QA, for testing, for test automation. What do you think about such situations? Is it okay or?
Well, yeah, that happens.
Exactly.
That definitely
point.
happens
Yeah.
to me. And at first, when I got like I wouldn't say a command, but a strong opinion on what should be used and how it should look. At first, I was kind of against that approach, but now retrospectively, I would say that it might make sense, especially in certain projects, certain teams. It really depends on the situation of any particular project, because sometimes you have a lot of good QAs, and good QAs tend to have strong opinion.
Yeah, that's true. Any
on
good
stuff.
expert might have.
Yes, that happens a lot in development, and in development work it's kind of normal, but you have to have a good manager
Yeah,
that
that's
will
true.
be able to mitigate the tension,
Yeah.
because at the beginning there'll always be tension. Someone doesn't like the technology, someone don't want to learn that particular
Yeah.
language or something, because for the whole life that this person I don't know, wrote in Python or JavaScript, some loosely typed languages, and suddenly you have to learn, I don't know, Java,
Yeah.
and write all of your tests in Java with strong OP approach and that kind of stuff. That
I agree, with this, that if you have to learn something. I used to have such situations in my life, in my experience. I had to switch from Python to Ruby, then from Ruby to JavaScript, and it was very harsh because I had to learn very fast because the business wasn't waiting for us to learn it. So I just had to go there, and just in 1 week I had to know the language and just write a test automation framework. So I guess I'm not a fan of such ideas, to be honest. Especially, I don't think that JavaScript might be a good language for for people who never worked with it to write some tests.
Well, it depends, because if your mind is already like asynchronous and that kind of stuff, you may learn JavaScript pretty quick, at least on the level that is required to write good automation. Because let's be honest, the level of knowledge of the language that you need to have to write a decent test is not that high.
Probably, but
It really depends. Again, let's get it straight right away. Everything depends, and there is no silver bullet for each and every case. You really have to consider a lot of stuff at the beginning, but like in real life, usually it's a shit show anyway, so
yeah, I know. Yeah, this happens basically. But what I wanted to say regarding JavaScript, why I personally don't think this is a good language, because I moved from Python to JavaScript. So for me, it was a movement. So I wasn't starting with JavaScript. So for me, it was pretty harsh. I will tell you why. Just one simple thing. It's asynchronous. So when you are from synchronous world, all of your tests, they execute like one by one, everything is okay. And you have, oh, hello, Ami. And we have, yeah, I think we can move. We have a really large dog, so, you know. So when everything is synchronous and you actually write the tests, you do some operations, and you always wait for operation to be finished. Then once you start writing asynchronous tests, it's like blows your mind. So
yeah, that's true.
For me, especially if a person like never wrote any automation, like this example that you said that some manual testers, they want to move into test automation, and they can do this on this project, then probably JavaScript wouldn't be the best the best language.
That's why I told that you have to consider which team do you have.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Because like usually if you already have a team, so it's a let's imagine that this is a new project in a well-established production company. Yeah? So they pick someone who will lead this project. This person usually selects some colleagues to be in their team, and later on, when the project is actually in the active development phase, of course you could hire more people, but the core team that you have at the beginning, it should be considered pretty seriously what those people know, what they could do, and what they want to learn.
Yeah, that's very good that you're saying that. You would be a great manager on the project, a team leader. So
the business tend to not agree with such approach.
Yeah, but you know, the team leader is there for to actually mitigate such situations. So.
Yes, and this is the hard part.
Yes, definitely. Oh yeah, that's another topic.
Well, it's part of the topic because business is always want to reduce the operational cost as much as possible. And I really think that our job as software engineers, let's say, because for me, software engineering, QAs are also software engineers.
Yeah, definitely.
At least QAs, because there's a big misunderstanding, at least from my experience and what I see, what I hear. There's a big misunderstanding between what QAs do and what testers do.
Yeah, definitely.
Like for me, it's two different fields. For testing, basically you can take someone from the street who knows how to use computer, and it will be a perfect tester for you because it will be like a real user that sees your software for the first time and just clicks stuff. Using that approach, you will find like, I don't know, more than 80% of the bugs that quality assurance team will never find because they are pretty asynchronous, let's say. Not there's no logic.
They don't know how to do this correctly, let's say, like by the book. So that's right.
With experience, you tend to get like your vision tend to wash out.
Yes.
And there might be some
pretty
quirky situations, let's say. But beside that, as I said, our responsibility as software engineers is also to keep the operational costs as low as possible, but we, of course, will never lower the estimated costs as much as business wants. So there should be like a middle ground. It has to be found. And well, we are working in the teams, so everyone is part of the team at this point. Business, engineering, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we went to this topic of testing as a customer, as a user of the application, which led me to think that it would be good to define which actual tools we're going to use for testing, because one of the tools, on my perspective at least, is that we have to use some tools which investigate how the users use the application. And let's maybe imagine that we have an application I don't know, let's say e-commerce, let's say some just basic shop, let's say. So let's try and together try and define which technical parts we need for this project.
Oh wow, you chose
a
pretty hot topic.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's say I don't know, React.js on the front end. On the backend, let's say it might be JavaScript, because you're from JavaScript world, so we can say it's like Express.js or Nest.js, for example. And we might say it all is deployed on Google Cloud, right? And it's just a shop, like e-commerce website, just regular cart, something like this. You can add something, you can register. Maybe you can use, how was it called, this library for the authentication? Well, it doesn't matter. We have just a library for authentication, so it's an external thing, because this usually happens.
In JavaScript world, as we talk, new library
being
released. So like,
just let's say it's a library, just to complicate our lives a little bit. Or maybe simplify, it doesn't matter. So let's think, where do we start? Which tech stack we're going to pick here? Let's think.
Which tech stack? Okay, what team do we have?
Let's say we have like five developers, like 6 developers and 2 QAs, and both of them can do automation tests. So we're in a good situation.
Fine. Okay, in that case, what is the stage of the project? Is it just the beginning?
It's just the beginning. It just begins. So
it just begins. Okay, fine. In that case, at least like from my perspective, I will go with backend tests. So some kind of API tests. For example, if this particular e-commerce product has an API.
Yeah, okay. How would you do, because the API is also being developed, it's the very beginning of the project. So how would you handle this situation that, ideally we need to do early testing, which means that we have to start writing automated tests when the developers are writing the code. So we have to start simultaneously, basically, ideally. So
I will disagree on that.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. How you usually do this?
Well, usually the code is written first.
Okay.
Usually the code is written first. For that code, the devs usually write some kind of unit tests, and usually integration.
Okay, that's an approach.
Usually this part of quality assurance is kind of dev's job.
Yeah, okay.
At least from the experience, let's say. And QAs usually, again, based on the experience and based on what actually worked in the real world. So the best approach is for QAs is to just test stuff manually first.
Okay, just like a happy path validation, or it's something
not
more?
Really a happy path validation, because again, from my experience in production companies, in startups mainly, even if you are an automation engineer on such projects, there's a big chunk of manual testing that has to be done usually by you. So you kind of divide your time in some proportion.
Yeah.
Usually it's 60 to 40. 60% of your time you spend on manually testing stuff, writing checklists at least, because again, usually in real life you rarely have time to write proper test cases.
Yeah.
So at least some kind of a checklist, and then based on that checklist, you decide which elements of that list should be automated, which are not. Because again, I will stand my ground on that. You have to pick stuff to be automated. Not everything
can be automated. Yes, exactly.
And this is a hard part that business doesn't understand, in my experience, at all.
Yeah.
Not everything is possible to be automated.
Yeah.
And even if it's possible to be automated, usually it's not worth it, because you will spend more time on upkeep of those tests than actually doing anything else. The good example for that is visual testing, when you take screenshots and mix and match.
Yeah.
That can work, and I know projects that use such approach and kind of successfully, but it really depends on the complexity of the UI and a lot of different stuff. But
in regards to that, actually, I wanted to make one remark.
Okay. Go ahead.
I usually approach this the way that if your business, of course, business will start with suggesting that you have to test through the UI, because these are end-to-end tests and you're testing the same way as a user would use the application. So usually the business comes and says, okay, you have to write UI automated tests, like with Playwright or with Selenium, something like this. And actually, I highly disagree with this approach, because UI tests, they are usually quite unstable and they take much more time than the API tests. So I usually tend to try to disagree with the business and just write some basic stuff which will verify that, okay, those buttons work, that's fine. Maybe even I wouldn't cover everything. Maybe it's worth even to basically check it once in a while manually, but write a huge amount of backend tests, which will test the API, which is behind those buttons. And so this is what I would usually do on the projects, because if you cover everything with UI tests, then you first of all, the build is going to take like a huge amount of time, like to run all of those tests, like a full regression. And secondly, it's a pain. It's such pain to maintain those tests because if somebody, even if they're like very correctly written, they're like perfectly written, you will have issues when something is changed over the UI, and they're very much unstable. If there is something wrong with the network, they will start to retry to click on a button, or there is a pop-up which appeared. It's going to be hard to maintain so that they're stable. At least from my experience. I don't know how about you, but from my experience, it was like that. So that's why I usually.
But this is like part of the fun of having
Not for
UI
me.
tests.
Yeah.
I kind of agree and disagree at the same time with you, because from my perspective, you have to consider where is most of your business logic lies. If it's on backend, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a good
You
point.
have to have like rock solid backend tests, API, unit, whatever. But here I tend to agree with the business. Users actually use your application through the UI, and UI is important.
Okay, yeah, that's correct.
And how to ensure that your UI is not acting funky. This is an interesting topic, and I would say that's a separate talk easily.
Yeah, exactly.
As for in general, yes, on backend you will have much more test coverage than front.
Easily, I would say.
Yes.
Much more easily.
Well.
Usually, well, yeah.
Usually.
I mean, if we're talking about REST API, for example, then it's quite
API tests. Yeah, API tests are always straightforward, but.
Regarding early testing, because we were discussing this a moment ago, what we actually did on the project, and it actually worked. I was surprised myself that it worked. We made contracts with developers. So basically these were API tests, a little bit, there were a small amount of UI tests as well. And what we did, we actually agreed that this particular endpoint is going to return this data in this format. So it was like very well defined. We were writing it in the same language, so it was easy for us to basically understand which data is going to be returned, and we just made some interfaces. Yeah, something like that. But actually, you can just use Swagger, or you can use just just basic stuff to display the responses, requests which you have to do to interact with the API. And you know what? It actually worked. So we started writing the automated tests with taken into account this Swagger document and those interfaces. And once the code was ready, we just ran the tests. Of course, a few of them failed, but actually a lot of them passed. So it was fine. Or of course, some amount found some bugs. So because there were some issues in the project. And then we had this stage of modifying the tests that failed because the tests were written incorrectly. And there were some differences between how we interpreted the Swagger document, and it actually worked. So that's a technique that you can try on your project, but I don't know if it will work for everyone. So
but it requires a lot of complication. I would say for sure it's not easy, but that's a pretty cool approach, actually, because it's like TDD on steroids. I would say
it's like we called it early testing. I believe this is how it's called in the books, in high books, in high LCM language. So We have a question, actually. So
Okay.
we have some discussion here. But we have a question. So, question from Rina. Okay, guys, tell me please, who has the last word in deciding what technology to use in testing? Business, development team, or the tester? Great question.
Great question. Really easy. It's always business. It's always business. Because even if you have the best intentions and you are the marvelous specialist in your field, if business doesn't have money to back up your ideas or your ideal world, ideal scenario, it will never happen. So it's always business. Like in some organizations, yes, the QAs may tell like, okay, if we will not have this and that, the project will not happen.
Yeah,
simple as that. And it's true for critical software, like some medical stuff, I don't know, some financial stuff, a bit less, but still, and of course like space and that kind of.
We have another follow-up question. What about architects?
Architects are in the same situation as business, as engineering. Like they may have the perfect approaches and perfect ideas and that kind of stuff, but again.
You know what? I could actually give you an example where we were able to convince the business. So
you are able to convince business, but if business tells you no,
yeah, that's another situation. Yeah, because they
have
to money, so
you have to work with that no.
Exactly.
So you have to like lower your expectations a bit. Okay, we will not have, I don't know, 1-to-1 ratio between QAs and devs. Let's go with 2-to-1 ratio and that kind of stuff. But
you know,
in the end, business always decides.
I have something like a story, maybe something like this.
Sorry, one thing to add to that, to actually be able to negotiate with business in terms of how much money you will have to deliver the project. You have to be a good negotiator, and it happens a lot when good engineers are not good negotiators. And this is a completely different story and topic to discuss, but that happens a lot.
Yeah, the architects should be good negotiators if they're architects.
Well, yes, usually if you're on the manager-ish position in engineering, you kind of have to.
Yeah. So you know what? I'm some kind of a person who likes to do rebels on projects because if I see that technology is misplaced for this project, I try to change it. This is who I am. I just do the revolutions, vive la révolution, and you know, I like doing such stuff. So actually, I had multiple situations when I was supposed to be using such technology, and I was trying to convince to change it, and it was successful mostly. And I can tell you, for example, we were using back then it was HP ALM. So probably some of you guys used it. You know what it is.
Dear Lord.
Exactly. I haven't used it before, but you know, I just saw it and I said, no, just no. We don't need this on the project. And you know, I could have left the project because it wasn't like the company that used it. You know, I could have left the project, but I decided, okay, I need to do a revolution, and I will try to struggle for this. So actually, what you have to do. Probably this is going to be, probably you guys are in such a situation that you want to sell an idea. So what works for me usually, first of all, think about very nice reports that you can do with those tests, automated tests, and that you can show to the management. Reports are selling the project like this, you know. It's perfect. So you would
any kind of dashboards,
exactly like
graphs or something.
This Allure, you can use Allure, for example, if you're from Python world, or I guess for JavaScript it also can be used. So this is very, very nice reporting tool. It's for free. It's for free. This is also very important. The second big thing here to convince somebody, you have to find a tool which is free. Especially if the tool you want to replace is very expensive. So then you might try to convince them that this way, that you will, you know, reduce the cost.
Convincing.
You know, sometimes they're not that convincing. So
okay.
Yeah, and the third crucial step here is that you have to tell that the migration process from one technology to another, whether it's reporting or test automation, it's quite simple. And here what we actually did, I wrote some scripts which would you know, work with the API of this HPLM, and they just collected everything we had, and you know, we just we had a full list of those tests, and I don't remember, to be honest, what we did exactly, but actually we at least had all of the manual test cases, and we knew from those manual test cases which we can automate. Some of them were automated in the HPLM, and we also knew that, and we could write quickly it in Python. So this is how we did it, and we migrated. And there were a couple of other less tricky migrations which I did. So I guess these 3 steps can help if you want to do a revolution. So these 3 steps should work. Yeah, and you have to make you know, you have to make a little bit of effort. Probably you will it will take you some extra time after work, because usually you don't have time for such things, because they wouldn't give you such time, but you do it in secretly, you know, as well. It shouldn't affect, of course, your work, but you know, you do it secretly. Then you say, okay, I have some tests, I want to show you something. You collect a meeting, you know, you gather people from business as well. You show them very nice looking reports. You say, okay, these tests are faster, you know, they're more stable. You can run the builds a couple of times to show that it's more stable and it's faster. Numbers are very important here as well. And then you say that, okay, this is what we need to do to migrate it. Yeah. And yeah, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's a good approach. One thing I want to add is for such presentations, it's quite useful to include some kind of a projection on how the tool that you want to introduce into the project will scale. Yes. How it will affect the development in the long term.
Yes.
Because sometimes, even if at the beginning, like, you look at the tool and oh my gosh, it's like $5 per user per month.
Yeah.
And it's huge money.
Yeah.
But in the long run, if it's something, I don't know, I don't have a good example here. Zephyr. Zephyr is
it's like X-Ray. It's something similar to X-Ray.
Yeah, it's a Jira plugin that allows you to write and manage your test cases. And it's pretty okay tool. But the pricing model is actually X dollars per user per month. And
yeah,
it's a hot topic for finances.
Yes.
But when you look at the, like, well, it sounds like I'm advertising Zephyr. I'm not affiliated with Zephyr in
it can be X-Ray as well. Simply, it's the same thing.
Kind of form, but usually, well, not usually, but there might be situations where in the long run choosing more expensive tool will produce more
That's true. Benefit.
yeah, let's say benefits for the team, for the project itself, because like we
Yeah.
are working on the project, and at least like I look at that kind of stuff. There is a business that provide money,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and there's engineering that developing the actual thing, and there has to be a good communication and good understanding between those two parties.
Yes.
How are we going, where are we going, and that kind of stuff. And if your tool, like you're saying, okay, we will implement this tool into the project, it will cost us X, but it will reduce our development time, I don't know, by 20%.
Yeah, but we have to show those numbers because otherwise they
Yes.
wouldn't be convinced.
Yes,
So
and that's perfectly normal. I
yeah,
wouldn't be convinced too.
yeah,
Numbers are pretty convincing.
yeah. Usually, often, like not usually, but often, business they just forget that okay, we will pay for this tool a lot of money, but it's going to be less costful if we compare it with the amount of people who are going to work on these tests or technology.
Amount
right?
of people, amount of
Yes.
time that you
How much time
spend
you will
in
spend on it?
the
Yeah.
actual tool, how
Mhm.
easy it is to use, to learn, and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. There's a lot of variables,
Yeah, exactly.
but like
Mhm.
yeah,
We have another question.
sure.
Okay, so oftentimes the customer asks to exclude any testing from the project in order to reduce the project budget. What risk does this approach may have, and how high is the risk? Oh, happened, happens sometimes.
Well,
Yeah,
well, where to start?
yeah,
If the customer wants to go without testing at all, that will be a hot topic, but it's not a good client.
yeah. As we see, Michael is writing. Then the high risk this project will fail.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
Good one.
at this point, it's not
Yeah.
the question if, it's the question when.
Exactly.
Because without any kind of testing,
Yes.
The project is doomed, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
Because some form of testing exists always. You may not have a dedicated QA team,
Yeah.
but your devs will still spend some time on writing unit tests, maybe some integration tests, maybe something more. It really depends on the team you have, but the testing should be always in some form.
How do you feel about user testing, like closed beta or open beta testing? For example, in gaming, they're doing this, and let's imagine that there were no testing at all, and then you get a couple of a couple of dozens of users who do the testing.
Well, oh, that's a difficult topic. Like personally,
Yeah.
from like my perspective, that's a shitty approach because, well, it's a cheap approach. Like, come on, when you look at the multi-billion-dollar company that cannot spend, I don't know, 1/10 of money they spent on advertising on actual testers that know what they are doing and what they are testing. That's one part, but from the other hand, like, that's a great tool for small indie studios that doesn't have money.
Or maybe if the game is not very complicated, like it's very alike, then
Yes,
it might be
yes.
Yeah.
But this as well, but it's a valuable tool, I would say, in QA's toolbox.
Yes.
User testing sometimes is invaluable. It, especially when you are trying to understand how the users will actually use the tool.
Yeah.
Because usually if you are on the cutting edge and you're creating something completely new, you never know how the users will actually use this product that you are.
Actually, regarding that, what people can use, just from my experience, in one company we used Mixpanel, to understand how the users are interacting with the application. There is also a tool called Hotjar, which is very cool. It also makes heat maps. It's a very cool feature. I didn't know about this, but it can do it shows you the page of the application, and you can see the heat map, like the dots or something like this, where the users, the areas, let's say, where the users click or move their mouse the most. And those ones where it has been done the most, it's highlighted in red or even lighter. And then those ones that are not often used, then they're just blue or transparent, something like this. So that's a very cool feature, because this way I think you as a QA, you have to look into those statistics, because this way you will construct your tests the way the user would use the application, not the way the books say, not the way that product owners imagined it. But this is very crucial. Of course, product owners also look at those graphs, definitely. But I mean, the real usage, it can give you an idea where to focus your testing.
Yes, I always
prioritize.
Advocate for QAs to have access for such automated monitoring tools. Either it's something like Mixpanel or Hotjar, or I don't know. Well, it happens to me a couple of times where I worked on the projects where a customer didn't want QAs to have access to logs.
Wow, okay.
That happens too.
Interesting. Like production or any?
Production, but still.
Yeah, okay. Because there might be some tokens there, passwords. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
But still,
okay.
You may provide an adequate training for your QAs about GDPR, HIPAA, and a lot of other privacy policies, let's say. And if you have such engineers, that's completely fine for them to have access to production logs, especially if your production logs are doesn't contain any personal information. Because if it's just like IDs and that kind of stuff, yes, of course you can track down the actual users if you have access to the database and that kind of stuff, but logs, from my perspective, QAs should always have access to logs.
Because there might be even some, I don't know, bugs coming from customer side. Like we get bugs from support, and we just get the piece of logs. But sometimes we have to look into logs deeper to understand what was actually happening there. So I totally agree. This is insane that you didn't have.
You can always use any kind of monitoring tools that are implemented are good. Any kind.
I would say maybe it might be harder with a database, like production database, but I suppose...
No, production database, I doesn't want to have access to that.
maybe read access.
Maybe read access, but on special occasions, it's not hard for me to like write a ticket for ops guys to, I don't know, maybe execute one SQL line and they will give me back the information, and I don't need access to production database. I don't want to have access to production database, but logs are different. Logs and other monitoring tools.
If we're talking about tests, which logs would you make in a test run? Because we're talking about the tech stack, so maybe we would like.
What do you mean?
We do reporting like this Allure, the example I gave you. But usually tests, like when you run a build in Jenkins, for example, or somewhere, you get the logs from the tests. Which logs would you include there? Do you have an idea?
In just tests?
Yeah, just the tests.
Well, all of the errors, of course. And then it kind of depends.
So
I like logs, and I like a lot of logs because they are helping debugging later on. But usually you need to consider the amount of logs you're putting somewhere, especially if it's some kind of a cloud providers like GCP or Amazon, because the cost may be not.
Oh, that's true.
Not what you will like.
Like AWS, for example, that's
yes. That it's for GCP. It's the same. It's really easy to click on the wrong button and double your cost.
Okay.
Maybe not in GCP, but in AWS.
Actually, a cool thing that I did in one of the projects when I was implementing the automated tests, those were, I believe, the API tests. Yeah, so the application itself was producing some logs, and we wanted to know what exactly was happening when you run this particular test. So what we actually did, we were monitoring which logs is the application producing, and when we start the test, we just start recording those logs into the logs of the test. And then when you see the logs from the test, you can see the actual logs from the application when the test started. So that was a very cool feature. Okay. So also I think this is something to consider. I don't know how you guys, for example, manage the logs in your projects, but this is like a cool approach, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like in my experience, usually logs are logs, unless something blew up.
Yeah.
But it's a good, that's quite useful, I would say.
Yeah.
At least I will gladly try that approach.
Yeah, I tried it. Actually worked. So maybe not from the project, but for us it was fine.
Okay.
We have another question. What makes a perfect testing specialist? Is it expertise in some technologies, or personal qualities, or ability to understand the customers or the users, or is it anything else?
Oh gosh. That really depends. I would say for me, it's personal qualities. Attention to details, a lot of attention to details, and I would say good quality assurance engineer should have a very broad set of skills and knowledge. Because again, based on the experience, it helps a lot, at least in testing. I would say it's contrary to devs world. Usually, if you're a good developer, you tend to focus on some kind of a technology or language or whatever. As for example, I don't know, you are a machine learning engineer, yeah? Basically, that defines your stack, defines your abilities and that kind of stuff. Quality assurance engineer, well, you may work with machine learning, you may work with, I don't know, physical devices, you may work with software, either it will be like, I don't know, data storages, e-commerce, games, whatever. Again, you may go deeper in one particular field. It's always good, but my personal opinion is for QAs, the broader knowledge and broader set of skills is always better.
And good imagination.
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to be enlightened with stuff that you can break. So, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Kinda, maybe. I don't know. I never liked to break stuff. I like to think about my testing career as not trying to break stuff, but just ensuring that stuff works as it intended to.
That's a good approach.
Because, I don't know, I don't like finding bugs.
That's why you are a developer right now, I believe. So
yes, now I'm not finding bugs. Now
you
I'm
like
producing
creating, not breaking,
bugs.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, same here. Actually, I like creating, not breaking. So that's what do you actually think about the ratio of tests? For example, if the developer team, they write a lot of unit tests, integration tests, and we have not much functional tests written by QA automation engineers, or maybe non-existent even sometimes.
Okay.
How do you feel about such situations?
Just another day.
Just another day. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Like.
Okay.
Well. Again, it really depends. In my opinion, it depends on the field that you're working in. In startups and smaller production companies, it's usually how it looks.
Yeah.
You have pretty good coverage by unit tests, maybe some integration tests, sometimes even a lot of integration tests, and considering that situation, from my perspective, you can fully concentrate on just UI stuff and
that's
the way how user will interact with the application. And again, it might be a hot topic, but for me, it's kind of a good situation for QAs because you basically are kind of offload the whole backend testing.
Yeah, I would say
to devs.
You might focus on more interesting scenarios, I would say, when you're testing.
Yes, you are free to do more exploratory testing, maybe some kind of different testings, like, I don't know, load tests or whatever. And based on the complexity, I would even argue that good backend tests covers usually half of the regression.
Yeah, but if it's backend tests, if we're talking about unit tests, then it's a bit different, I would say.
Yes, it's a bit different, but from my experience, I never saw a project where there will be only unit tests. Usually devs work on integration tests as well.
I have seen something similar. but sometimes it's not possible even to write unit tests, as it turned out. So, for example, with Django tests, I was very surprised when I started to work with Django. In order to write unit tests, you actually have to physically connect the test to the database. So,
excuse me, what?
Yes, you can mock it if you want to, but like if you write it the way that Django says to write it, you have to physically like connect to the database. So these are integration tests. These are not unit tests.
Okay.
So I guess these can cover a lot. Yeah, but yeah, so this is how it works, because Django is very dependent on the models which you use, and probably there might be a way, if you guys know a
Django
way.
is MVP,
Yes, it
I
is.
see. Model view controller.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
But one thing that would concern me with writing a lot of unit tests or integration tests and not a lot of functional tests is that for those developer-written tests, you usually mock stuff. So you mock some services.
Yes.
So anyway, I would say you have to have some end-to-end tests in place. One
Sure.
thing that I might do if there is a problem, for example, you have a test run. Let's
But
say,
are those tests have to be automated,
which ones?
in your opinion? End to end.
It depends. Sometimes probably not. If there is not a lot of them. If there is quite a huge amount of them, then probably you have to automate at least some of them, because then you will go into this problem that the full regression which you have to do before releasing will take like 2 weeks or something like this. It happened to me. So I guess you have to do some automation. Yeah, but one thing that you could do actually, I remembered about a case when we had like a very long automated regression, like a couple of hours. Like you could run it in the night with Jenkins, it would be like a nightly build. But sometimes it happens, like it depends, it might be even front-end tests which are taking that long for a huge project. And then what we actually did, I'm not saying this would be applicable for every project, but what we did, we used mocking, like record and mock technology, because the problem was that there were really a lot of requests happening, and the requests were taking quite a lot of time, and this was a problem. And we actually recorded all of the answers from the server, and we were able to run them with mocks and then without mocks. But one thing you have to ensure for this approach is that you have to run without mocks at least once a week, or the one that is feasible, the amount of times it's feasible. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jobs, one
Yeah.
quick
Yeah.
with mocks,
Yeah.
one long without mocks.
This way you can focus on testing just the UI, because you're not testing the server side, you're just testing the UI, which is also a cool thing, because you will know that, okay, this is a problem with the UI right now, not with the backend. And this also gives you some idea what is happening. So maybe a good thing to include into your technical stack. So I think I will leave a comment. There is a very cool technology which is called wiremock. It actually records you any request that you do. It works as a proxy, and if you want it, it will record all of the responses that the server does. And you can even modify them, because it just creates JSON file per each request.
I worked with wiremock a couple of times.
If you run it as a proxy, then wiremock will respond instead of the real server, and then you can just turn it down, and you will work with the real server instead. So very cool technology, and something to consider when you have such situations.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of diverted a bit from the original
probably,
topic,
but
more into
talking about the stack. So maybe let's
that's the problem with such topics. From my point of view, they are much more
complex, and
yes, they are much more complex than it seems.
Yes.
And there's a lot of variables, really a lot of
yes. So maybe let's try to sum up because yeah, we've been talking about 1.5 hours.
Let's go back
Yes.
with your proposition of e-commerce.
Yes, exactly.
site
Let's try to
that
sum up what we have to think about.
sells something.
Yes.
In that case, at least like what I will do, let's assume that devs are writing unit tests
Yes.
for the backend, and let's say that these e-commerce site, I don't know, have 20 pages or something. It's kind of static. Oh, a good thing also to consider is whether your product is an SPA or not. SPA meaning single page application.
Oh yeah, that's
because
important.
there are some tools that are quite loved by different devs and different QAs. For example, Cypress. In JavaScript world, it's a UI testing tool. Let's say. Let's say
kind of like Selenium, but it's not.
It's not a Selenium. And this is a tricky part because when choosing the tools, always read the fine prints, because Cypress, for example, doesn't support tabs in browser. So if your application opens another tab, you're screwed. Like, there are workarounds, but basically you're screwed. Applying those workarounds, you will not have end-to-end tests.
Okay.
Because underneath you will like start another test, kinda in a different tab, and it's tricky. But for example, the Selenium or Playwright or I don't know, Puppeteer will easily work with multiple tabs, Windows even.
Yeah.
So you really have to consider the amount of integration of your testing tool into the browser.
Yeah.
I would say. Again, that's my personal opinion because I like Selenium. Don't throw rocks on me. Yes, I do like Selenium. I think it's pretty solid tool.
Yeah, for a lot of years.
For the job that has to be done. Yes, it's been around for tens.
Yeah.
I guess it's a couple of decades already. Yeah.
Probably yes. I'm not sure, to be honest, but it's been there. It's been there.
Yes. And it's well known. All of your edge cases were probably faced by someone at some point, and there is an information how to fix your particular problem on Stack Overflow or anywhere in Google. Even like ChatGPT, if you want to use new technology, even ChatGPT is much better with old tools, because there's a lot of stuff on internet with old tools. And cutting edge, while it's shiny and interesting and there's new approaches sometimes, it's new stuff. You will be alone in the field, and usually your only source of help is
the code,
issue tracker,
or the code,
itself.
Yeah.
And that's pretty advanced stuff, I will say. I will never ever advise someone to learn a new tool that exists for less than 2 to 3 years. if you are trying to automate something for a production company or a company that will for sure exist for another, I don't know, 10 years or something. New and shiny stuff are good for pet projects that you do on
Maybe
the side.
POCs or something like this.
POCs or something, yes, but not the production.
Okay.
The production should be rock solid.
Quick question about those front-end tests, because usually how it's done, you have, it doesn't matter even whether you're writing first the API, then you write the front-end, but the tricky part here is that you actually, once you write some front-end tests, there is a high chance if something is modified in the application, you will have to change them. Like you have to maintain those tests.
Yes.
Is it a good idea to, if we have started the project, is it a good idea to write those front-end tests right away? Or should we first start on the API tests and then go to the front-end tests?
Well, it's two different approaches, and I think both are valid. I don't see a big problem in starting to write UI tests at the very beginning, because if you write those tests in a good way, most of the changes will be painless.
I had a situation, I tend to disagree a little bit, because this was actually a mobile project. It wasn't like a pure web project, but I had a situation that it was the very beginning of the project, and the requirements for the UI were changing drastically. So I just couldn't, I was writing tests and I had to modify them the whole time because the requirements were changing, and this happens at the early stages of the project.
Yes,
usually.
if it's not a simple locator change or something, or
no.
addition of
it was
a button or something, then yes, in that case, you definitely should consider omitting UI testing.
So maybe a remark,
at least automation of UI testing, but
it's probably a remark if you are trying to pick a stack for a very new application where you suspect that the requirements might be changing, then first things first, you might want to focus on something that will not be changing too much. It can be UI, but usually it's backend, it's not changing.
I kind of feel like we will have to do a follow-up to this
we will have to, but it's fine.
Stream where we will just take a sample project
we can. Definitely,
and
try to
create the whole
we can try, definitely we can just try to create, maybe not documentation, we could even try start writing some tests for it live. I guess we will manage to do this. Just first like happy fun.
Let us know if you are interested in such
let us know. It might be quite challenging for us and interesting.
The actual work and not just talking.
Yes.
Because we could talk a lot.
Yes.
And while it's, at least from my opinion, that's pretty important to just talk.
Can do practice as well.
Some practice is also useful.
So we have our, for example, our UI tests. We have discussed this. I mean, which stack we can pick for this, right? So we could take Selenium. If, for example, we have multiple tabs in this web application, so we have to remember about this. So what about how we run the tests? So some CI/CD maybe. We need to think about this as well, right?
That depends on what the company has already, or will it have something. Usually, like CI/CD stuff, is picked and chosen by the ops guys. And that's, at least from my experience, that's absolutely fine, because those are the people that will work with tools daily. And for us, I don't know, it doesn't really matter for me how to run those tests. Either it will be Jenkins or GitHub Actions or, I don't know, Circle CI, God forbid.
I don't know what it is. I'm a happy person, I'm really afraid.
I don't know. At least from my experience, I doesn't have a good experience with Circle CI. I rather prefer Jenkins.
I have something similar with TeamCity. I don't like TeamCity.
Yes.
Sorry guys if you like it, but I didn't like
that's
it.
That's a personal opinion. Yes. There are tools that you like, there are tools that you don't like, which doesn't mean that I am unable to work with that tools. I just don't like them. That's it.
Sometimes you, in a test team, you have to set it all up yourself. This is an unfortunate truth, that you have Jenkins, you get the admin in Jenkins, and you have to do it yourself. So sometimes ops cannot help you even with the machines, so you have to do it. Even, I had multiple situations in my career when, Jenkins is suddenly down. Nobody knows what's happening, so why? What the heck? So, and it turns out that it was just running, on somebody's personal computer somewhere, in another country. No, in another country. And this guy just, he left this company, and his computer was wiped. And the Jenkins was, it was set up on that computer, so it's no longer there. So this actually happens. Unfortunately, but
this is actually the kind of situation that, in my opinion, quality assurance team should highlight and mitigate.
If you think about the tech stack, you have to actually think about the CI/CD right away, where you're going to run it, because this stuff takes time to get the servers, to install Jenkins, to do such things, or any other CI/CD.
Depends also on type of VMs that you use for Jenkins, how many memory.
And whether the tests are going to be Dockerized, for example.
Yes,
because you can Dockerize the tests as well.
That's true.
Also important. So all of those things you have to keep in mind when thinking about.
Yes.
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 Exactly. Delightful.
Exactly.
Okay. So what else? Reports. The last step, I believe. Reporting and maybe also traceability. Traceability is a very important thing when we're thinking about the tech stack, because you can do multiple things with it. For example, you can link it to Jira. For example, Allure framework. It's my favorite one. That's why I'm talking about this, because I know it for pretty much. I've been using it for a long time. So you can actually do, if you guys are from Python, there are decorators, and there is this special decorator for, built into this Allure library, where you can set the actual Jira ticket. And then if you have a report, then this Jira ticket will show up in the report, and you can just click it, and you will see all of the tests that were testing this particular Jira ticket. And you can even sort it by features, group it, not sort it, but group it by features, by user stories, anything else. And you can actually click the link in the report and go to Jira and see what the issue was, basically. So this is very cool. A second thing that you can do is, if you're using Zephyr, for example, or something similar, like test trails or anything else, now it's a bit simpler because it already has integrations with Jenkins, with some CI/CD tools, and it has libraries. Back when I was at test automation, exactly, back in my days, it wasn't available. They had an API, so you had to write it all yourself. But sometimes it still happens, for example, for HPLM, we had to write it ourselves because there were no tools, definitely.
Yeah, but it's definitely a good thing to consider. The integration with
Yes.
your ticketing system like Jira or something. It's pretty cool, but you have to consider, do you really need that level of, I would say,
Precision or
clarity
yeah.
in your...
Sometimes you might not need it.
Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes the product team or business wants to actually look at the each and every test run or something.
Yeah.
And that kind, in this situation, this will be invaluable. Perfect example and perfect implementation, let's say.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do this.
We had that on one project, direct link between Jenkins and Jira, and with this plugin that I've mentioned at the beginning, I will not say this name again.
They have to pay us next time.
Yeah, they'll have to pay us. Anyway, you were actually able to set the test runs for each and every test that you have automated. And those test runs will immediately show up on dashboards or the ticket itself, which was pretty cool when you were working on the big epics.
Yeah.
And for an epic, you usually have a set of issues, and with Zephyr, you will also have for each issue some set of tests. And well, test runs are visible, so you can see that, okay, we have 10 issues to cover. 5 of those issues are already covered by test cases. Half of that half is covered by automation, and out of that we have like 95% of successful runs. 5% of tests are funky or randomly failing. Well, we'll have to look at that. Yeah.
By the way, interesting thing I wanted to point out is that you can also, because there should be some source where you're keeping all of the tests, like manual automated ones, like all of them. So usually what people do, they just keep it in this tool that you mentioned, or in other ones, like in a separate tool. But one thing to consider, I also did it on one of the projects, and it was pretty cool. It actually worked. I was surprised it worked. You can create tests, like manual ones, even in code. Like you can write them in code. So this might be just a simple function or something like this that accepts a string with a step of the test, and then if you run the report for those tests, or you run a tool which will synchronize it with something like Zephyr or X-Ray or something like this, it will just put those tests there. But the cool part is that it's version controlled. So you know, if it's in code, it's version controlled, so you will not lose the earlier version, because not all of the test management tools have version control. So if you change something in a test case, you will never see it again. The previous version, I mean, you will not see it again. But with code, you have everything in one place. Yes, it's code, so probably somebody will be a bit, some manual testers, they might be a bit surprised at first, but it's very simple to write it. You can just use, comments, because some of the comments, like block strings in Python, they can be used for documentation. or you can use create a simple step function, and you will just have to copy this step function, and write the steps there as a simple string. And then what is even better, that if you decide to implement this test case, you want to make it an automated one, you already have the pattern in the code, and you can just add some code there with the logic. So I don't know, it's a bit complicated. I have some doubts whether everyone should use it or not, but maybe
what was
something.
the upkeep cost? How hard it is to manage such?
It wasn't hard because we already, I believe we didn't have any X-ray or something like that. We just kept everything in code, and we could just run the tests. Did we have X-ray? I don't remember, to be honest, but it wasn't hard. The hardest part was just to show all of the manual test team how to write those tests in this in code. But I think after 1 week they already didn't complain, so it was pretty fast. So
Okay. It's always the question how you sell the features to
definitely.
people.
Yeah, so it's something to consider as well.
Look, it will be your gateway to coding.
Exactly, yes.
You will make your first commit. Do it.
Yes, exactly.
Come to the dark side.
Yeah, so this is something to consider as well. I believe the last thing is the reporting, but we already covered it. Oh, one more thing to consider is whether you want to run those tests for pull requests, like development pull requests. This is tricky, but tests might take some time. So if you want
small subset.
Yes, a small subset maybe. So you have to think about maybe some sanity tests, or somehow make it the tricky way that you can detect what code was modified.
So it should be a small subset.
Yeah.
Smoke tests, or just a part of your regression,
Yes.
but a small part.
Mm-hmm.
Because if, at least from my experience, if tests for commits take longer than, let's say, 15 minutes,
Yes.
it's really frustrating for devs, because you commit your code, you create a PR, and suddenly you have 15 minutes to drink coffee and, I don't know, talk to your colleagues because your tests are running.
Why are you complaining? You go drink coffee.
Like,
might be good thing.
It might be, but like, come on, work. You have to work your work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm just joking. So, but this is something to consider. Whether it's going to be just unit tests, because sometimes it's just unit tests.
Just frustrating, like when, especially if you have really live development environment and you have a lot of stuff that you have to do swiftly, then it really starts to frustrate you when your tests are slowing down your development experience, especially if your customers have an issue on production and it's kind of important to fix it right away, because either you will lose a big customer or you just lose some reputation as a company. You want to fix those issues real fast, and if your tests are like blocking you to even check whether what you've written is actually fixing the problem, that's really frustrating. So for smoke tests, I would say 5 to 10 minutes max.
Yeah.
For pull requests.
Yes. Maybe when you merge, you could run more, but
yes. When you are like building your main,
the main branch, then
then like more sophisticated subset of tests will probably do the job, but for PRs it should be really small. subset.
Yeah, and probably the last thing that you have to think about, not the last, in the meaning that you don't have to think about it earlier, but the last thing that we want to talk about is that you have to remember about performance tests, like load tests, performance tests, and all of those things, and you have to pick some technology for that as well. So, and it might be quite different.
I would say it depends on the scope of your project.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether it's crucial for your project to have a certain availability or something. But, because sometimes at the beginning, I wouldn't say it doesn't make a lot of sense to test performance, but at the beginning, usually your performance is good anyway, because it doesn't have a lot of functionality and a lot of different services that talk to each other, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So personally, I would omit the performance testing at the beginning of the project and move it more to the later stages, at least before the GA.
But a little bit before the GA.
Before the GA, yes, for sure. But again, it really depends on the project and the business plans for a particular project.
A very important thing when you are thinking about the tech stack, I think you have to think about the environments that you are going to run the tests on. So that you have lab, you have staging, you have production, and you have to understand where exactly you want to run those tests. Because with manual testing, it's fine. You just, you operate as a user, so it's not a problem to test not a problem to test even on production, presuming you don't have access to database. So that would be fine. But, with automated tests, I believe you have to prepare those environments and to be sure that you have the environments for that.
In some form, yes, but in general, I would say that for your tests, there shouldn't be any difference on...
Yeah, there shouldn't be any difference, exactly.
You run them.
Yes, that's very important.
Again, life is a bit different, and sometimes there's quite a lot of difference between different stacks for a particular project, but you have to tend to keep your devs and your opses to not create any kind of difference between stacks.
Yeah, that's very important. I've seen the projects
important
where the stacks are quite different. Yeah. That's very bad if you have any differences. Yeah.
If all of these stacks are exactly the same, then you may make some assumptions like, okay, I've tested that thing on dev thoroughly, it's working, so when we will deploy the same code on, I don't know, release candidate, then we might actually run a smaller subset of tests to ensure that it's still working, but you don't have to perform all of the tests.
Yeah.
At least.
Agree. Yeah. Okay, I think, did we forget something?
Well, it's
definitely. That's
the topic is so broad that
so
yes, we can talk hours on this.
Yeah, so maybe we can think about actually making some practice next time. So probably set up a test project, and maybe to do it, you will do it in JavaScript, I will do it in Python, something like that. That might be interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, or we will think about it. Please let us know in the comments if you have any ideas, or you're striving to, to.
Yeah, let us know how we should suffer.
Exactly. And we will suffer, so I will definitely do that. So I guess this wraps up for today, right? We shouldn't hold everyone for longer. it's almost 2 hours, so
Okay.
I guess we can finish. So thank you very much, Dima. This was a very productive discussion. I hope you guys also liked it because I also learned a lot from Dima, from your perspective. Because
Thank you for having me.
yeah, I think we will have you more for this practice. So yeah, if you like the stream, just don't forget to give us a like and subscribe for the channel. We have a lot of other videos. There is one video coming up each week. So we do videos on Python mostly, but we will have something with JavaScript as well soon. And yeah, I guess I'll see. We will see you. I will see you soon. So yeah, with the new topics. So thank you guys.
Around.
Thank you.
Peace.
Have a happy coding.